Hi guys, I hope everyone's doing well. This week I want to talk about the portions that we read on the Shabbat, and specifically the second portion we read on Shabbat of Metzora. This past Shabbat we got to double dip with two portions, and I want to try to see if there's something for us to connect here with Yom Ha'atzmaut, Israel's Independence Day that's coming up. So this past week we read these two sections that have a lot of leprosy talk. In the portion of Tehila, we learned that you can get leprosy on your body and on your clothing. It's not really leprosy. That's just like a loose translation that we use into English. We don't know exactly how to define this disease, but the Torah sends you away if you have this, leprosy, and then you leave the encampment, and there's this process of sacrifices and purification. And then in chapter 14 verse 32, it says, okay, this is the law of those, of how you make the sacrifices. If you're poor, you can bring the lesser sacrifice, and the high priest purifies you. Okay. And what we see in the portion is that leprosy doesn't seem to be like a physical disease, or primarily a physical disease, because you don't go to the doctor for it. You go to the Kohen. That means that there's a spiritual cause here, and the sages teach us that the primary cause for this tzarat, for this leprosy, is lashon hara, gossiping, evil words, slandering another person. We see it hinted to in the fact that Miriam herself suffered from this kind of leprosy after speaking about Moshe. But then when we finish, this purification process, it's mostly in Parsha Tehila, and then we seem to get to a change of subject in chapter 14, verse 33. It says that Hashem speaks to Moshe and Aaron. It says, when you come to the land of Canaan that I'm going to give you as a possession. It's like, great, okay, this sounds good. New subject. What are we going to talk about now? What is the good news Hashem is going to give us about coming to the land? And then it says, and I will place a legion of tzara'at, of this kind of leprosy, upon a house in your possession. The one who has the house goes and tells the Kohen, and then it explains what happens. The Kohen clears out all the property from the house, and then no one actually becomes impure even per se, but they lock up the house and they see if it goes away, and if not, then they dismantle a few stones and then they see if it goes away, and if not, eventually you get to a situation where the whole house is demolished. Now this raises a lot of questions, like why is the issue of house leprosy separated from all the rest? It would seem like it should just be one section, like this is your body, this is your clothes, your house, and like if you get that, then do this, that, or the other, and you'll be cured. It seems like a new subject, but it's kind of the same subject. And it even has a different Torah portion. Like, why isn't it all in one Torah portion? But then furthermore, why does it start with saying that this is connected to coming to the land? Like the verse says, and you're going to come to the land of Israel. It sounds so festive, but then the verse tells us it's like you're going to come to the land, you're going to have these horrible lesions on your house, right? And we know, and we see this in Miriam, that this is like a spiritual sickness. The spiritual sickness can happen in the desert, right? Miriam got sick in the desert. So why does specifically the leprosy of the house only happen in the land? What is it related to the land of Israel? So the Midrash says that it's actually separate because it has a different spiritual cause. While this tzara'at, leprosy of the body and the clothing, are here for lashon hara, for evil, gossip, use, saying horrible words about another person, slandering them. Leprosy of the home is for an entirely different reason. It's a reason that in Hebrew is called tzarut ayin, like miserliness, being cheap, not sharing with others with an open heart and an open hand. The Midrash illustrates it very humorously. It says that this would happen to a person that wouldn't share things with their neighbors. It says, imagine, let's say there's this family and someone knocks on their door and they're like, oh, can I borrow some barley? And then you say, oh, I wish I could, but I just used my last cup of barley in my cholent. Better luck next time. And then a different neighbor stops by and says oh, do you have a few dates I could borrow? I'm on my last few dates. And you say, oh, I wish I could help you, but my cat is allergic to dates. I don't keep any cats in the house. I don't keep any dates in the house. So the Midrash says that the punishment is so fitting, because what does the Kohen do? He says the Midrash says this is something that comes on the house of a person that wasn't sharing. So imagine what the punishment is. The Kohen starts clearing out boxes and boxes of their stuff out into the front yard, and suddenly the neighbor passes by and says, oh, no dates, huh? And the other neighbor passes by and they're eyeing the box and they're no barley, it was all in the chillin', huh? And then this humiliating process where your greediness and selfishness is kind of held up for everyone else to see, but mostly for themselves to see, and kind of own up to. It's this kind of mirror that's held up to them. And so the Torah here is giving them this gradual process. It's like a chance, that mirror of iniquity is held up on our faces to allow ourselves to work on ourselves. Maybe it'll pass. So the Torah gives you some time. But if you don't get the message, it's like more drastic steps. The gradual dismantling of your home is what happens if you don't get the message and straighten out your attitude. Like if you don't know how to give to others, maybe you don't deserve to have all the abundance that you have. If you don't have like generosity, then like literally and figuratively, you don't really deserve the gifts that Hashem has given you. And so it will be dismantled from you, it will be taken away from you and eventually demolished. And so he explains why the approach here is different. Like with the body and the clothing leprosy, you have to go away from everyone. But in the house leprosy, you don't even become ritually impure. And that kind of makes sense if you understand that it has a different reason. Because while speaking Lashon Hara, slandering somebody is an obvious sin, being miserly is not actually a sin. Like you have certain boxes that you need to tick off of how much charity you need to give. But even if you do that, like you follow all the Torah rules about, giving to the poor, a tenth and tithing and properly and doing everything, you can still be kind of a jerk. Being miserly is like a midah. It's a trait that you need to work on inside of yourself. It's about sharing even when you're not commanded to share. So how is this connected to the land of Israel? What, was it not important to share in the desert, like when people are living in tents? Well, what is happening here, that the Kli Yakar has a great explanation that he gives for this. He says that the constant test of possessing the land of Israel is the test of living with abundance and still not forgetting Hashem. Like the constant trial that we're going through is to recognize that Hashem gives us everything and it's not from our own strength. Like in Devarim, in Deuteronomy chapter 8, it says that our big problem is going to be lest you eat and be satisfied and build good houses and dwell within, and your heart is going to grow haughty and forget the Lord your God, and you're going to say to yourself, my strength and the might of my hand has accumulated this wealth for me. So it's for that reason, that we need to be extra careful in the land of Israel. It's for that reason, it's like Hashem, we're taught that Hashem doesn't give us a Nile, it doesn't give us like a river that provides water for the land of Israel, but we're always dependent on rain, because the challenge of living in the land is not if we can be good in bad times, but if we could be good in good times. I just finished reading a book called A Light in the Darkness about Janusz Korczak, and the book talks about the unbelievable generosity of spirit that people had in the ghettos during the Holocaust, trying to save one another. Janusz Korczak, he barely was standing. He was old and sick and starving, and he would go to the end of the earth in the sacrifices he made to provide food for the orphans in his orphanage. Like generosity in the good times, check. But what about generosity in the bad times, check. But what happens in the good times? You begin to think the things that you have are actually yours. And you can even say to yourself, I'm the one Hashem gave these things to, so I must deserve them. But no, Hashem tells you having abundance is not just a gift, it's a responsibility. You are chosen to have everything you have, not because you're so worthy of possessing it, but because Hashem knew that you'd be the right steward for that, to be able to properly use it for good and to share with others. And so this Parsha is maybe not coincidentally juxtaposed to Yom HaAtzmaut, to Israel's Independence Day, because we look around and celebrate this huge milestone of 75 years of living in the land. We can see how Israel went from this place of so much lacking, so much poverty, just a band of refugees, literally skin and bones, rising out of the Holocaust to build a country where we have just so much blessing. But the challenge is always, just like in the Torah portion, if you want to keep that gift, if you want to keep that home, you need to remember that it always came from Hashem. Remembering where it came from expresses itself in an open heart to give to those around you. Now, Israel has been blessed not only with physical abundance and agriculture, science and technology and all of that, but also, and maybe even more importantly, in spiritual abundance. More people learn Torah in Israel than ever in Jewish history. But are we going to choose to be a light to others? Are we going to keep all of that to ourselves? Or do we share it with the world? Are we going to shine the light of Torah forth from Zion in a way that shows that we recognize that both the physical and the spiritual that Hashem has given us in the land is because he chose us to be the stewards of that can share that with the world. You see this idea really illustrated also in the Haftorah, the process that Hashem wants us to go through. In the second book of Kings, chapter 7, we read about these 4 lepers sitting outside of the city, and it's a time where the Arameans have basically choked off Samaria from all sources of food and basically are starving them. And it's at that point, people are, God forbid, not it's happening. People are eating their children, and the King Yoram, is portrayed as being completely helpless and passive and incompetent. And it is at that point that Elisha the prophet prophesies that Hashem is going to save everyone and create tremendous abundance. He promises that food is going to become so inexpensive, like people that hear him just scoff. The guard hears him and scoffs. No one believes him. No one takes him seriously. We're starving. And these 4 lepers are sitting outside, and they say to themselves, look, we're going to starve. No point of staying here. Let's throw ourselves at the mercy of the Arameans. They'll probably kill us, but that's better than starving to death. And who knows, maybe they'll actually have like a 1% chance. Maybe they'll have mercy on us and take us in and feed us. So they go to the Aramean encampment, and they find it abandoned. But what they don't know is that Hashem made this miracle, and the Arameans heard sounds of soldiers and thought that maybe the king of Israel had hired mercenaries to come and fight them. So they fled. They left everything behind and ran away. But these lepers come, and they see tents packed with like food and goodies and animals, and they start like squirreling away little stockpiles of food. They go out to the wilderness, bury something in a hole, and come back and take more. And they're burying, and they're going back and burying. But then they have this change of heart in verse 9. They say, wait, this is good news, but we're keeping it quiet to ourselves. We don't want to incur guilt. Like, why are we allowing others to starve? Let's go back and relate this to the king so that everyone can come and enjoy this abundance. And it's like an amazing process, because it's like hinting to us that this is what it's about. They start out selfish. They want to keep everything to themselves, but they transform. Look the kind of people they started as, but then while they're eating, they realize it's not really theirs and open their heart to share the good news. And it was from that abundance that they essentially saved all of Samaria from starvation. Now, if Hashem would have wanted to provide for Samaria, it could have just dropped food like manna from the heavens. There's a million ways Hashem could have fed everybody. But it's like Hashem wanted it to unfold in a way that you see internal transformation of people first before the physical redemption comes. It's like through working on our own midot and our own generosity, Hashem says that is what is going to bring salvation. So Hashem could make all our problems here in Israel go away in an instant, but he's not just seeking solutions, he's seeking our hearts. He wants us to work on ourselves, not just to follow the mitzvahs, but to go beyond the mitzvahs, to change our traits, to have a posture of responsibility for those around us and for those all over the world, to bring what we have, realize that it's from Hashem, and bring that to others. So it's like Hashem is hinting to us through the Torah portion and through the Haftorah that our blessings and our final redemption are not just going to plop down on us, but the secret to achieving them is doing the inner work that's required of us, of keeping the Torah, but then going beyond the Torah and realizing and living in that state of mind of knowing that what we have is from Hashem. And as things are from Hashem, it is our responsibility, not just our privilege, but our responsibility to reach out to others that might have less, both physically and spiritually, and share that abundance with everyone. So with that, I wish you guys a beautiful week and a happy Israel Independence Day. Bye, guys.